So, alright, welcome back to today's episode. Today we cover the probably last part of the article, except for maybe this part, which we're probably going to include. And this is the Schwarzerle, which means black. And probably not, because that means Graf in German. Ader. So, black Ader. And so I think let's just start. As always, it's the same if you've watched the series for a bit longer. This is, of course, focused on translation, so we're going to translate the words, so the English words in the German sentence structure, and then we're going to translate it in the context. So, let's just start. So, in Erlenbruchwäldern brechen Erlen stetig und treiben erneut aus dem Wurzelstock aus. So entsteht ein ganz besonderes Waldbild. This is the caption to this picture, which is the, you could say, head picture, like the top picture of this part of the article, which is of course about the Black Ader. So, in Erlenbruchwäldern. Erlenbruchwäldern means alder break forests, word by word. So, alder swamp forests. I think in English you should probably understand that, hopefully. I'm not quite too sure what this means, but as we can see on the picture, this is probably what this means. So, in Erlenbruchwäldern and other swamp forests brechen Erlen stetig break alders stetig, steadily you could say, so constantly, brechen which means umbrechen, or the rest of the word umbrechen, which means to break. So, brechen stetig und treiben erneut aus dem Wurzelstock heraus. And treiben, which means to kind of float, but to float on top of water, like go out, but in terms of water. Yeah, drive, but it's not drive. Drift, rather drift out of the root stock, you could say. Root, stock in German is something else. Rhizome, Rhizome in German. Stock, that was... No, not the floor. Stick, I always wanted to say, but it's not a root stick, so rhizome. So in Erlenbruchwäldern, in alder swamp forests, break alders steadily over, you could say, and drift again. Erneut means again, aus dem Wurzelstock, out of the rhizome out. So, in alder swamp forests, alders steadily break or constantly break and drift again out of the root stock. So entsteht ein ganz besonderes Waldbild. So, gets created, entsteht. So, I'm just gonna let that Google translate. Arises, So arises ein ganz besonderes Waldbild, a very special Waldbild, wood picture. Bild means picture, Wald means wood or forest, so forest picture you could say. Entsteht, by the way, derives from the word stehen, which means to stand. Stehen. And entsteht means arise, so stand up basically, or stand out of something. Ent means to go out of something, for example. Entkommen means to escape. Entnehmen means to take out of something, you see this pattern of out of something. So, die Schwarzerle. Let's read the article part, the main part now. Wie die Esche und die Ulme ist auch die Schwarzerle an der Nähe zum Wasser. What? Oh, another mistake. We keep on noticing these mistakes in this article. Last episode we already had the missing dot here, which is still corrected. And this one, which was in uppercase, like if I reload the page. Here, you see this and this. We corrected that last episode. And here again we have this mistake. The double ist. Wie die Esche und die Ulme ist auch die Schwarzerle an die Nähe zum Wasser angepasst. And this ist we're gonna of course correct, because we can't let it stand there. this is just, of course, unacceptable. Optimal ist für sie daher in erster Linie ein reichlich mit Wasser versorgter Boden und relativ viel Licht. Gelegentlich wird sie aber auch erfolgreich auf extrem trockenen Standorten angebaut, zum Beispiel auf ehemaligen Schutthalden. Im Gegensatz zu Esche und Ulme verträgt sie vorübergehende Überschwemmungen nicht im gleichen Maße. Gegenüber konstanter Nässe ist sie aber resistenter als alle anderen Baumarten bei uns. Deshalb gedeiht die Schwarzerle eher entlang langsam fließender Flüsse und Gräben, die nur geringe Pegelschwankungen aufweisen. Außerdem kommt sie auch in sumpfigen Bereichen vor, wo sie praktisch im Wasser steht. Schwarzerlenwälder werden auch Erlenbruchwälder genannt, weil die Bäume immer wieder umbrechen und neu aus ihrem Wurzelstock austreiben. In Deutschland gibt es außerdem 2 weitere heimische Erlenarten, die Grauerle und die Grünerle. Beide kommen von Natur aus in Gebirgslagen vor, während die Schwarzerle überwiegend im Tiefland wächst. Obwohl die Schwarzerle hervorragende Holzeigenschaften vorweisen kann, ist die Nachfrage nach ihrem Holz aktuell eher gering. Dies kann sich aber schnell ändern, etwa wenn die Nachfrage nach dunklen Möbeln wieder steigt. So. Wie die Esche und die Ulme ist auch die Schwarzerle an die Nähe zum Wasser angepasst. Like the ash tree and the elm tree is also the black alder at the closeness of the vicinity. Yeah, probably. Proximity vicinity to the water adjusted. That's the rest of the word. Passen, angepasst. Passen, which means to fit. To match. So, like the ash tree and the elm tree, also the black alder is adjusted to the vicinity to the water. Optimal ist für sie daher in erster Linie ein reichlich mit Wasser versorgter Boden und relativ viel Licht. Optimal is for her, therefore, in first line, so primarily. In erster Linie is a phrase, which means primarily ein reichlich mit Wasser versorgter Boden, a richly, you could say, with water supplied, versorgter. We also had that in previous episodes. Many of them watched the last or one of the last episodes where I explained it more thoroughly. Supplied, Boden, which means floor, or in this case rather soil, you could say. Und relativ viel Licht, and relatively much light. So, optimal is for her or it, because it's a tree and in English you would say it. Primarily, a richly with water supplied, or richly, a floor richly supplied with water and relatively much light. And a lot of light, you could say. Gelegentlich wird sie aber auch erfolgreich auf extrem trockenen Standorten angebaut, zum Beispiel auf ehemaligen Schutthalden. Gelegentlich, which means occasionally, that's the rest of the word, liegen, which as a verb means to lie, to lay. And by the way, as a noun, this means a sun, what's it called? A sun chair. Like, let me just Google a picture. Not Liège. Of course, it always. God, this is what I mean. Something like that. A sun chair. You could say a sun. I don't know what it's called in English actually, but in general we call that a Liege. So yeah, Liegestuhl, Liege. And so where were we? Gelegentlich. So, and gelegen means laid down or lied. So occasionally is being. By the way, this also, what I was thinking is that this also refers to the word Gelegenheit, which means occasion. So or opportunity. Occasionally is being, she, wird sie, or will she be, will be, but in this case it's passive, so is being, she, but, aber auch erfolgreich, also successful. Erfolg means success with an uppercase E as a noun, and erfolgreich means success rich, so successfully. Auf, on, extreme, extremely. Trockenen, trocken means dry, so dry. Locations, Standorten, we also had that in some previous episodes. And stand, of course, means stand. Orten, locations, so locations or places. Orten can also mean locations, so standing places. Standing places means location, so Orten can also mean places. That was what I was wanting to say. Angebaut. So anbauen derives from the word bauen, which means to build. Anbauen means to cultivate something, so can also mean to build something on, like literally on an existing building, but this what you call Anbau. Yeah, cultivation, of course. But there's rather an extension onto another building, or at another building. But yeah, in this case, Anbau in general rather relates to cultivation of plants than the extension of buildings, but can also relate to that. So, gelegentlich wird sie aber auch erfolgreich auf extrem trockenen Standorten angebaut. Occasionally is she being also successfully on extremely dry locations being cultivated. Zum Beispiel, in general this means for example, but word by word this means to the example. Zum Beispiel auf ehemaligen Schutthalden, on ehemaligen, that means, what's it called? Having been before. Former Schutthalden. I'm actually not quite sure. Schutthalden is this like the other form of trash dump, something like that. Schutthalden. So former rubble heaps. Just gonna look that up. Schutthalde. Yes. No. Interestingly, this seems to refer to rocks. So yeah, rocks. Probably rather in terms of rubbish, like the one from broken down houses where you just dump all the so-called rubbish from the houses, so stones, whatever, cables, you see there, everything is coming out of it. But yeah, so ehemaligen Schutthalden. So, for example, on former rubble heaps. Occasionally, it is being successfully cultivated on extremely dry locations, for example, on former rubble heaps. Im Gegensatz zu Esche und Ulme verträgt sie vorübergehende Überschwemmungen nicht im gleichen Maße. In contrary, we also had that in some previous episodes, zur Esche, to the ash tree and elm tree, verträgt, which means tolerate, sie, she, or in this case it in English, vorübergehende, this comes from the word vor, which means for, like before, in front, über, over, but vorüber means to, kind of to pass, you could say. For example, das ist vorüber, that has passed, you could say, but in this case, yeah, it kind of also has this meaning. We can also dissect that like for, before, over, but yeah, just rather take vorüber. Gehende, which means going, so it tolerates it passing, going, you could say, or away, going. Vorüber, you could also say that means away, going. Überschwemmungen, so passing, you could say, means vorübergehende. Not in the same measure. And I of course have to load my laptop again because that happens almost every episode. Sorry for that, but yeah. Überschwemmungen, which means floodings, we also had that in the last episode. Nicht im gleichen Maße, not in the same measure, you could say, but in the same, what was it again? In the same, there is another word. Dimension, yeah. Mass, you could also say. So, in contrary to the ash tree and the elm tree, it doesn't tolerate passing floodings as well as them in the same dimension or dimensions. Gegenüber konstanter Nässe ist sie aber resistenter als alle anderen Baumarten bei uns. Gegenüber, so not in contrary, like against, you could say. Gegenüber means against, over. So against, you could say. Or, yeah, I don't know. Let me just look that up. Opposite, opponent. And what does that mean? Compared to constant wetness. Constant wetness, I don't know. But like, yeah. Let's just say compared to constant wetness, because constanta, of course, means constant. Nässe, yeah, means wetness. Nass means wet. So the A without the two dots means nass. So wet. And Nässe means wetness. Ist sie, is she, aber, but, although, resistenter, more resistant, als alle anderen Baumarten bei uns, than all other tree species at us, you could say, so native to us. So, opposing constant wetness, is she, though more resistant than all other tree species at us? So, I'm just gonna let Google translate that. However, it is more resistant to constant wet conditions than any other tree species in our region. Okay, next sentence. Deshalb gedeiht die Schwarzerle eher entlang langsam fließender Flüsse und Gräben, die nur geringe Pegelschwankungen aufweisen. Therefore, deshalb, therefore, also had that in some episodes. Gedeiht, which we also had that in some episodes, but I'm going to explain it again because I think it's been some episodes. So, gedeihen means to blossom. I don't know where this comes from. Actually, I'm just going to look this up. Gedeiht, Etymologie. Yeah, wait, here. So, interesting, yeah. Maybe the AI knows more. Tihan. Interesting. Pinhan. Huh? Binhan? Pinhan? I don't know. Oh god. But dicht. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not quite sure, but deihen. Yeah, interesting. Okay, so this derives from the apparently dead word deihen, which means to grow or to make progress. So yeah. Deshalb gedeiht, but this just means to blossom, to thrive, you could say. Die Schwarzerle, therefore, thrives the Black Alder eher entlang langsam fließender Flüsse und Gräben, rather along, langsam, slowly, fließender, flowing. This derives from the word fließen, which means to flow. And langsam fließender Flüsse und Gräben, rivers and Gräben, trenches, die nur geringe Pegelschwankungen aufweisen. By the way, Gräben derives from the word graben, which is the single word, which as a verb means to dig, as that, and as a noun it means a trench. Die nur geringe Pegelschwankungen aufweisen, that only little Pegelschwankungen, which means to have different like highs, different, what's it called? Different amounts of water, different, what's it called? Oh, I forgot the word. Not different, verschiedene Höhen. But I'm just of course gonna translate it. Different heights. Why did I say highs? I meant heights. Different heights in terms of the water stand, you could say. In German we say Wasserstand. Water level. But of course Pegelschwankungen means, I don't know what Pegel means, but level fluctuations of the water. So yeah. Little water level fluctuations aufweisen. We also had that in some episode where that meant to show up, to appear, to, yeah, aufweisen. Exhibit, show. So, therefore, thrives the black alder rather along slowly flowing rivers and trenches that only little water level fluctuations show, or shows, and rather show. So, therefore, the black alder rather thrives along slowly flowing rivers and trenches, which only show little water level fluctuations. Außerdem kommt sie auch in sumpfigen Bereichen vor, wo sie praktisch im Wasser steht, as we see here. So, außerdem, besides that, comes she or it also auch in sumpfigen Bereichen, in, what's it called, in sumpfigen, sumpf is basically the same as moor, swampy, moorigen, more boggy, yeah, swampy, boggy Bereichen vor, which means areas vor, kommt vor, refers to vorkommen, so to show up, to appear, to occur. So, besides that, occurs it also in, what was it again? Sumpfigen Bereichen. Just gonna translate that. Swampy areas, wo sie praktisch im Wasser steht, where it practically in the water stands. So, besides that, it appears in swampy areas where it practically stands in the water. Schwarzerlenwälder werden auch Erlenbruchwälder genannt, weil die Bäume immer wieder umbrechen und neu aus ihrem Wurzelstock austreiben. Black alder forests are being also alder break forests, word by word, so alder swamp forests being called because the trees always again break over, umbrechen, or around break you could say, but break over you could say, und neu and new out of her rootstock, what was it again? Flowed, you could say, so, well, not flowed. I think they probably mean grow, so that they grow out of this rhizoma, which it said, which is probably some sort of, I would say, we're gonna see maybe this thing that probably broke, and then they grow again up from this broken, in German we would say stumpf, broken stump. Yeah. So Google Translate translates that as what? Black alder forests are also called alder swamp forests because the trees constantly break over and sprout anew from their rootstock. Of course, Google always has these fancy translations. So, ja. In Deutschland gibt es außerdem 2 weitere heimische Erlenarten, die Grauerle und die Grünerle. In Germany there is, we also had that in a lot of episodes, but there is, it just means, außerdem, moreover you could say, or besides that, 2 weitere heimische Erlenarten, 2 more home or native, I was about to say homely, but that is very literal, so native, alder species. Die Grauerle, the grey alder, I guess, und die Grünerle, and the green alder, probably. Alright. And I think that was pretty literal. So in Germany besides that there are also 2 more native alder species, the grey alder and the green alder. Beide kommen von Natur aus in Gebirgslagen vor, während die Schwarzerle überwiegend im Tiefland wächst. Both come from nature, by nature, in Gebirgslagen, or by nature out, you could say, in Gebirgslagen vor, in mountain areas, in Gebirgslagen, in mountainous regions, vor, so kommen vor is kind of like come up or occur, während die Schwarzerle überwiegend im Tiefland wächst, whilst the black alder überwiegend, overweighingly, you could say, because I think that's also a word in English, in the deeper land, oh God, let me just mark that, im Tiefland, in the lowlands, what is that again, and the valley grows. So, beide kommen von Natur aus in Gebirgslagen vor, während die Schwarzerle überwiegend im Tiefland wächst. Both come from nature out of in mountainous regions up, whilst the black alder overwhelmingly in the deep land, or I guess like valleys are meant, wächst, so grows. Both come up by nature in mountainous regions, whilst the black alder overwhelmingly grows in the deeper land. Obwohl die Schwarzerle hervorragende Holzeigenschaften vorweisen kann, ist die Nachfrage nach ihrem Holz aktuell eher gering. So, even though the black alder hervorragende, this by the way derives from the word hervor, which means, or her, which is a prefix, vor, which is a prefix, her means to somewhere, like to me, for example, or generally it's meant like to come to the speaker, so come here, if I say come here, I mean come to me. Vor means in front, before, so hervor means come in front of something, like out of something in front. For example, when I say come hervor, I mean, for example, come out of, I don't know, wherever you are. Hervorragend, ragend derives from the word ragen, which is not really a word used, but if used, it just means to, what's it called? Herausstechen, for example. to stand out. Bestechen means to spike out, I believe. Sting out, pierce out. So ragen is kind of the same, but rather not so piercing, like just to... It's kind of the same as ranken, but ranken is a bit different, like to twine, I don't know, something like that. I hope you understand that. It just means to stand out, basically. Hervorragend, in this case, this is very literal, means to stand out of something, in front of something, so that is kind of the star of the show. So hervorragend means incredible, perfect, very good, outstanding, it just means. Holzeigenschaften, wood characteristics. So even though the black are the outstanding wood characteristics, vorweisen, show, basically, which also means before, and prove or show. Present. So even though the black are the outstanding wood characteristics present can, word by word, ist die Nachfrage nach ihrem Holz aktuell eher gering. Is the asking, Nachfrage, after asking, word by word, which means the... I don't actually know how to translate that. The demand, the demand. Also a French word, originally. Nach ihrem Holz aktuell eher gering. After her wood, right now, aktuell, like currently, eher gering, rather little. So is the asking or demand after her or its wood currently rather little. Even though the black adder can present outstanding wood characteristics, the demand for wood currently is actually pretty little, or rather pretty little. Dies kann sich aber schnell ändern, etwa wenn die Nachfrage nach dunklen Möbeln wieder steigt. This can change very fast though, for example, if the asking for darker furniture rises again. Yeah, that wasn't word by word. This can itself, though, fast change. For example, or about. This in general means like circa in German, so probably there's a similar word in English. Yeah, I think there's also circa or circa in English, but approximately. And this just means, for example, but can also say approximately if the demand after darker furniture again rises, but you wouldn't say that in English. So, for example, you would say if the demand after dark for furniture rises. So this can change very fast though. For example, if the demand for darker furniture rises again very fast. And now we have this last part, which we're gonna go through also pretty quickly. Die häufigsten Bäume sind Fichte, Kiefer, Rotbuche und Eiche. Die häufigsten Bäume sind Fichte, Kiefer, Rotbuche und Eiche. The most often, die häufigsten Bäume, most common maybe. The most common trees are, what was it again, fir? Or was there something else? Spruce? Oh, spruce. That was probably fir. Yeah, of course, no. Spruce, pine, European beech, I think it was called. Und Eiche, Rotbuche und Eiche. Eiche means oak. Oak tree. Ausgehend von der gesamten Holzbodenfläche Deutschlands von 10.887.990 Hektar finden Sie die prozentualen Flächenanteile zu einigen Baumarten in der folgenden Tabelle. Die Holzbodenfläche umfasst alle Flächen, auf welchen primär Bäume für die Holzproduktion wachsen. Hierzu zählen auch Flächen, auf denen vorübergehend keine Bäume stehen. So, Ausgehend von der gesamten Holzbodenfläche Deutschlands von 10.887.990 Hektar finden Sie die prozentualen Flächenanteile zu einigen Baumarten in der folgenden Tabelle. Ausgehend, word by word that would mean outgoing, ausgehend von, outgoing from, and I think you can probably guess, but that just means, actually, how do I translate that? That means to take, like to assuming, I think. Starting from der gesamten Holzbodenfläche, the entire Holzbodenfläche, forest, floor, area. So, yeah, basically what it means. Wooden floor surface, yeah. Wait. What is meant with wooden floor surface? Is this meant with like inside used wooden floor? I think not. I thought it was meant for how many trees of this species are planted in Germany, like, or living there. Probably, but this said wooden floor surface. I'm not quite sure. It could also be the other thing, but I assume it's relating to the living tree, so we're gonna assume that. Starting from the entire wooden floor surface, or I would say tree floor surface, or tree, like, I don't know, wood surface, or the forest area. I don't know how to translate that, because I don't necessarily know what to assume or make of that. But of Germany, of 10.887.990, so 10 million, 887, because in German we also always say if there is a smaller digit, you could say, than, like, not smaller than 0, but if there is a digit that is not 0, so that you wouldn't say 80, so 80, or 90 as we have here. If that were to be like 999, in English you would say 999. English we in German we would say 999. So the 90 comes at the end and the smallest digit starts. So 887, 807, 80, 7 and 80 would say 807 and 80, but in English we would say, of course, 887, so this 80 starts first, which is of course more logical, but German of course has to make it more complicated. So 10,887,990 hectare, which is I think the same in English, maybe hectares, finden Sie die prozentualen Flächenanteile zu einigen Baumarten in der folgenden Tabelle. Find you the formal form, the percentual area parts to many tree species in the following table. Die Holzbodenfläche umfasst alle Flächen, auf welchen primär Bäume für die Holzproduktion wachsen. By the way, I didn't translate that in general. So, starting from the entire wooden floor surface, whatever that means in this case, of Germany, of 10,887,990 hectares, you can find the percentual area parts to many of the tree species in the following table. Die Holzbodenfläche umfasst alle Flächen, auf welchen primär Bäume für die Holzproduktion wachsen. By the way, if I'm talking too fast, you can always either tell me in the comments or just slow down the video, because, yeah, I just noticed. Die Holzbodenfläche, so the wooden floor surface, whatever that was meant to say, but I think, as said before, it refers to the living trees. Umfasst, which is also quite literal, this means to, like, this derives from the word, first of all, fasten. which can also have various different meanings. In this case, it already doesn't give me the literal, like the very much literal translation of that or meaning. Here it says grasp, like grasping in your mind, but fasten in general means to touch something, to take something, do something with your hands. To grasp is basically to get something, like you grasp it with your hands, but just with your brain, that you understand something. For example, there's this phrase in German, ich kann es nicht fassen, which would mean I can't touch it or something, I can't grab it. Ich kann, of course, the languages get confused. Which means I can't believe it. Or could also mean I can't grasp it, but no, not really, no. Rather, I can't believe it. And fasten in this case does not mean to grasp something, or not grasp, to grab something with your hands, but rather to, I can't believe it. It's not possible to make it up in my mind. But fasten in general, as I said, means, for example, I grab a cup of coffee. I mean, you can't see it, but I've just grabbed my cup of water. I'm not going to drink something. So, umfasst basically just means by the way, can either mean to do something over, like for example we had umbrechen, which means to break over, so, or to tip over, but to break over. But it can also mean to like circle around. Basically what it means is just always around. So break over, around something, umbrechen. For example, around the force that breaks it down, whatever this might be. Or umfassen in this case, like not grab. I was just about to say grab around something, but you can basically imagine umfassen the word as grabbing a cup with your hands and getting your hand all around it, because it's, for example, so small, like a very small cup of, I don't know, tea, and you grab it and you can put your entire hand around it, and that is basically umfassen. But in this case, umfassen means to, it kind of means the same, but in more of a sense, more of a not metaphoric, what is it called? In more of a logical, conceptual meaning. So to surround, basically, but not necessarily. Basically, umfassen also can mean like surround, but surround a concept, or to contain something. Surround something, but also containing it. So umfassen, what would Google say? That was a very long explanation for basically saying something. Includes, basically. But very literally, that was just to explain it to you. The wooden floor surface includes alle Flächen, all areas, auf welchen primär Bäume für die Holzproduktion wachsen. All areas auf welchen, on which, primarily, Bäume, trees, for the Holzproduktion, wood production, wachsen, grow. We also had that in previous episodes where I always said, or say, I still say that, you can also mean to wax your knees, you can also wax your knees, but wax your legs or whatever part of your body to get rid of the hair with the roots, with the follicles. I don't know what it's called, but in general, this can also mean to wax something, because in Germany we also have that word wax, which is the same as in English, but in English it's just with an X, where you also have waxing, to wax something. But in German we just say wachsen. And wachsen also, of course, the main meaning of it is to grow. So, wachsen. The wooden floor surface contains all areas on which trees primarily grow for the production of wood. Hierzu zählen auch Flächen, auf denen vorübergehend keine Bäume stehen. Hierzu, hierzu, this is what it basically means, but hierzu zählen, here, yeah, I'd probably say here or this. This also includes, yeah, but basically it means here to count also areas. Here to means this, or here to zählen means this includes, as Google just said, so, or there count, well, I don't know how to say that, like there to, there to count, no, this also counts for, something like that. Also areas, auch Flächen, auf denen vorübergehend keine Bäume stehen. On which vorübergehend, we also have that, where do we have that? Here, vorübergehende, so passingly or something. Temporary, yeah, temporarily. Keine Bäume stehen, no trees stand. So yeah, this is of course relating to areas where trees grow, or not areas where wooden floor is used, but I was kind of confused in the first sentences. So here count also, or there too is also being counted. There's also being counted to areas. This also includes areas on which temporarily no trees grow. So, Waldbaumart, forest tree species, Fichte, Kiefer, Rotbuche, Eiche, Lärche, Weißtanne. That was spruce, pine, European beech, oak, larch, white fir, silver fir. And yeah, Anteil an Gesamtholzbodenfläche, but as I said, Holzbodenfläche is very double. It has a double meaning, so it's kind of confusing, because you can also say when you have a house and it has wooden floor, you would also call that Holzbodenfläche. For example, when you have, I don't know, laminat, but that is maybe not necessarily laminate. Laminate, yeah. So Fichte 25,38%. You don't say 38%, you say 0,38 or not 0,31, not 0,31, but 0,31. This is what we had to learn in primary school, and it's still stuck to my memory. So 22,31%, 15,43%, 10,38%, 2,82%, 1,68%. Fläche in Hektar, Area in Hectares, also 2.763,219, 2,763,219 hectares. Yeah, I think you can I'm just going to read them in German ones for you to understand, because numbers are cool explaining themselves, of course. 2.763.219. You could also say 2.763.219, und you can also not say 2.429.623, 1.680.072, 1.129.706, 307.050, 182.757 hectares. And yeah, that was the end of this series. That was actually the last article, and after I don't know how many months, with of course pauses in between, we are finally done. And yeah, I think off we go to another adventure. I'm gonna see what we're gonna read next. If you have any suggestions, of course, I would be glad to read them in the comments for next articles, what you want to have explained, or yeah. And see you in the next video. That was it for today. Bye!